It's time to dig into that Week 13 waiver wire, and today we're going to be looking at those running backs. We're going to go deep at the position, looking at the top running backs, and then going all the way down to the bottom so you deep leaguers can get a look at the diamonds in the rough. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We go deep looking at the waiver wire every single day, multiple videos. We do deep dives on the trending players, those guys climbing the depth chart, coming back from injury, those guys climbing up the waiver wire rankings. We do deep dives on them so you can get more information on those players with the You Need series. And on top of that, we use these videos to help you set your lineups. Click that button. Stop missing out. But the story of the waiver wire this week for the running backs is we got a couple guys seeing more opportunities due to injuries. But honestly, we're looking at lottery ticket handcuff running backs like we're looking at every week. So we're shuffling the chairs, getting ready for the Titanic to hit the rock. Ameer Abdullah got some work, saw some targets, got a touchdown last week, and is going to be getting work in the passing game. We're watching the incumbent starting running backs too because they're going to muddy the waters. Amir Wright could be back. We could be seeing Zeus suck up some carries. Alexander Madison, we do not know how long he's going to be out. These guys were doubtful and it was up to game time. So there's a chance both of them could be back or maybe one of them. But that's something to pay attention to. As of right now, Ameer Abdullah is the guy you want out of this backfield. Nobody really else. Sincere McCormick got a little bit of work. Dylan Labe was used on special teams. Ameer Abdullah is catching balls out of the backfield. He was targeted 6 times. Ran almost an 80% route participation rate, which was very good for a running back. That's up there. We ran 47 routes. That's a lot of routes ran for a running back. That being said, you're looking at him, especially if both those running backs are out. If it's Zeus and Ameer Abdullah, that's a tandem, and they used that tandem before last year. So he could still be viable in deeper leagues, or if you're hurting that bad at the running back position. Jeremy McNichols. Eckler got banged up. Brian Robinson got even more banged up. Jeremy McNichols getting some work out of the backfield here. Might get some more going into the future. We got Tennessee coming up this week. Not a great matchup. Then we got a bye week. So it's not like you're clamoring to get him. You're just plucking him to see what happens off the waiver wire. He's going to get some workload. He's going to get some touches. He can also score some touchdowns. He's done that off and on throughout the season. Even with him sharing the backfield with these running backs, Jeremy McNichols is a guy to look at. Not a must get, but compared to the handcuff running backs, you're at least going to get more touches and more opportunities. A better chance with those touches than compared to some of the backups who are only getting a couple carries a game. Tank Bigsby's on waivers right now. He's been hurt. We're coming back from bye. Not many great matchups for him. He's off and on throughout the season. Could be off and on for the rest of the season. I'm guessing he's going to hit for you in your lineups like once out of every 3 games. That's something you may not want if you're good at running back and you're just stashing for upside. But that's something you want if you want touches every week. Somewhere between 8 and 12 or something like that, pushing double digits with him sharing the backfield with ETN. That's something to pay attention to, especially if you're hurting at the running back position and you'll just take the carries and you'll just pray for him to fall in the end zone. Trey Benson, he's an upside dandy lottery ticket running back. Probably one of the top lottery ticket running backs right now because he's getting that work. He's getting opportunities out of the backfield. Something happens to James Conner, you can definitely see him getting a lot of work, and also everybody's going to be blowing fab to get him. So you might as well stash him right now. If you got James Conner, you either want him or Emari Demercado. I believe these 2 running backs are going to share a lot of the work. Emari Demercado will run a lot of routes. He'll be getting the money work, getting work out of the passing game. Trey Benson, though, 4.3 speed. He's electric. He could be a home run hitter. I like both players. We'll talk about both of them. Tyler Allgeier is one of my favorite handcuffs. He's the safest one because I know for sure if something happens to Bijan Robinson, he's going to get all the work, all the touches. He's going to get 20-plus opportunities. They're going to ram him up the gut. He's going to get the goal line work. He's going to get more than enough opportunities to produce in the box score. Tyler Allgeier is a primetime handcuff. He's underrated. He's a guy to have on the back end of a roster Roschon Johnson's starting to see some more work. He's starting to score touchdowns on the consistent. It's not a lot of work, but it's something to hang your hat on if you're hurting at running back and you got to start one of these handcuff running backs. On top of that, if something happens to DeAndre Swift, he's going to get a lot of work because they like him a lot. They use him a lot in the passing game. He runs a lot of routes for a backup running back behind a running back that runs a lot of routes himself. Getting a 25.5% route participation rate for an RB2 behind a pass-catching running back. That's a solid amount of work, and that's an indicator that he's going to be used a lot in the passing game. He was last year as a rookie. He had some games where it was like 7 targets. He's going to get volume, and that's a running back you want stashed on your bench just in case. Jaylen Warren is getting workload at 45.7% opportunity share in the snow against Cleveland. A 19.2% target share, 5 targets, getting work in the passing game. The money touches. Great for fantasy when that happens. He's going to be up and down all season long because he's sharing the backfield. But still, if you're looking for another running back that's getting work and you don't want the handcuff running backs, this is the guy to pick up because he's at least going to get touches that could lead to fantasy points. It will be up and down. But guess what? There's nothing really steady on the waiver wire anyway. Jaylen Warren's at least getting work out of the backfield, catching balls, and some runs up the gut. Cam Akers, if something happens to Aaron Jones, you're going to want him. He's going to get a lot of workload. If something happens to Aaron Jones, he's going to be the guy. On top of that, there are games where he's getting double-digit opportunities, like around 10-ish. That being said, if you're in a pinch and you got to start your lottery ticket running back, this might be the guy you want here because he could get enough volume where he could scratch the surface of running back potential in fantasy, like 10 fantasy points or so, just because it could be a game with extra volume for him. And then on top of that, the kicker, if something happens to Aaron Jones, you got the backup running back on a good team that's moving the football. Antonio Gibson saw 2 targets and ran 17 routes last week, 36.4% opportunity share. We're back to looking at him in tricky game scripts where the targets are flown to the running backs. You might be interested in him. Again, another ho-hum pickup, but a 1B back here that might get enough work in the passing game to get you by if you need to start a backup running back. Kenneth Gainwell needs to be rostered on all leagues. If something happens to Saquon Barkley, he's going to be getting a lot of work. He's going to be good in fantasy. That offensive line's cooking. The Eagles are moving the ball. He's also getting touches and opportunities late in games. Kenneth Gainwell is a sneaky handcuff running back that could pay big dividends down the line if something happens to Saquon Barkley. Ray Davis, we know this story, but one of the top handcuffs because we already saw it happen. It was for one game. James Cook was out. He was the guy. He was a monster, catching balls in the backfield. Solid between the tackles. I want him rostered on most of my teams if I can get him, especially if I got James Cook. If I'm looking for a lottery ticket running back, this would be one of my top ones because I know he's not going to get messed with, and I also know that he's going to get enough opportunities to be viable in fantasy. Gus Edwards might be seeing more workload coming up. We need to be more efficient running the ball. We've been ramping things up since the injury. J.K. Dobbins, knee injury. We got to pay attention to how that's going to go. We're paying attention to J.K. Dobbins. We're paying attention to this backfield. But Gus Edwards could be leaning into a bigger role. Jaylen Wright is a pop gun running back that could score on any given play. He's seeing more opportunities in this offense. It's not a lot, but it's more opportunities. He's beating out Mostert for touches. It could end up down the line, he starts seeing more and more, maybe in the back couple games of the season. That's something you want to keep in mind, especially in the fantasy playoffs. But all it takes is one touch. And if we're starting to get 7 to 10 touches a game all of a sudden, that's good enough for fantasy, especially if you're really hurting at running back. Jaylen Wright's a guy to look at. Jonathan Brooks, I look for him to get like a Jaylen Wright-esque workload, kind of similar to Miles Sanders, used in the passing game a little bit more than Jaylen Wright, and I look for that to ramp up over these next few weeks. I look for it to be a good backup workload where you're not trusting it if you got good stable starters, but if you got to play money ball here and there, the upside with Jonathan Brooks could allow you or entice you to put him in when you're hurting that bad, especially with the explosiveness and his work in the passing game. Should see him run about 10 to 12 routes per game comparable to Miles Sanders. That's really what we should forecast there, what Miles Sanders was getting. Miles Sanders was running like 3.7 yards per carry. McCaffrey. He has the talent to usurp that. He has the talent to really get about 8 to 10 touches a game. Maybe not enough to supplant your good starters, but if you're hurting bad enough, that is a good home run threat down the line. And the Panthers have some upside matchups at the running back position. Definitely a player that needs stashed. Blake Corum is a player that needs to be stashed in all leagues. However, if you got Kyren Williams, you need him because Kyren Williams is getting a lot of touches. And if he goes down, those touches, most of them will be going to Blake Corum. Some to Ronnie Rivers, but most of them to Blake Corum. And you're going to want that in the playoffs. You do not want to fight for that off the waiver wire because that's going to zap your team. Use your last roster spot and have that insurance policy unless there's another lottery ticket you want. But if I got Kyren Williams, I want Blake Corum. If I don't have Kyren Williams, I'm just considering one of those other lottery ticket handcuff running backs. I'm picking my poison, whatever I can pick up. I want one of those guys as my last spot on my bench. Mainly because that last spot on my bench, even though they're scoring fantasy points, honestly, it's not going to be enough to win my league. Maybe a matchup here and there. Maybe if I actually use them. More than likely, they're not going to win my league. So I'm going to use one of these upside dandies, stash them, and if something happens, I'm going to use them. Manny Wilson's getting touches and workload. We've been talking about him all season long pretty much. Almost every waiver wire video, he's getting to work. If something happens to Josh Jacobs, he's going to be stuck in there getting the touches. He's going to get in the workload. He's going to grind it out between the tackles. Manny Wilson will have that upside. He's showing that. He's a very gritty runner, and he can hold it down for the Packers for a stretch. Sean Tucker is an upside lottery ticket running back. He's a handcuff, and he's behind two running backs. But if one of those running backs go down, he's stepping up. The Bucs have a great schedule in the fantasy playoffs. Their rushing attack is going to go off, especially these running backs, especially Bucky Irving. But Sean Tucker, if one of those running backs go off, he'll be going into a great schedule, and he'll be getting the touches. He'll be getting some opportunity. Maybe not enough to win your league, but enough to get you by, and that's something to look at with Sean Tucker. Braelon Allen, if something happens to Breece Hall, we know he's going to get the workload. We saw that earlier this year when he was sharing touches with him. He'll get work catching balls out of the backfield, running routes, big hammer up the gut. Another player to stash for the fantasy playoffs, Emari Demercado sharing the backfield with Trey Benson. We talked about him earlier. Whenever James Conner has to go out for a couple plays, get an ankle taped up or whatever, he's running routes. He's getting the work out of the passing game. He's getting good opportunities. And he's going to be a sneaky bet if something happens to James Conner. Justice Hill, catching balls out of the backfield. Very random fantasy asset. He'll hit on random weeks, catching the ball downfield. But if you're in a 16-team league, 18-team league, or something like that, he's a running back to look at because of the volume in the passing game. And his spike weeks can really help you win your weeks. Keaton Mitchell, you're just watching him. We're still watching him down the line to see if anything emerges. It's probably a 20-25 bet. But still, if you're in an 18-teamer, 20-teamer, or something like that, this is a lottery ticket that might do something down the line, or if injuries hit, they may have to explore what they got out of him after the injury. But those are the running backs we're looking at going into Week 13. Let me know what you think in comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.